Oops, swipe to flip. Okay, I think this is running. I guess we'll see. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is so DHCP. So I want to dive into a little bit of DHCP. So DHCP right now, it's kind of interesting. It's running on our internal network with ICS. So it is kind of a little bit weird. So again, review. We've got our switch running, and the switch is actually has an IP bound to it. So this is 192.168.137.1. Okay, so that .1 is the default gateway out to the internet. Okay, for basically for everybody. So, and this actually has DHCP. Okay, so there is this DHCP that's actually running on this switch, and it's giving out IP addresses in the 192.168.137, you know, XXX. And the one that's giving out a standard 24, you know, 255.255.255.0 subnet mask, and it's giving out the default gateway of itself, you know, 192.168.137.1. And then what DNS is it giving? And what DNS it's giving? This is critical. This is important because .1. So the DNS it's giving is 192.168.137.1. So that's, and if we look at your domain controller, let's just look at the 2012 R2 box. This over here is set at 192.168.137.205. And this is also your DNS. Okay, your other DNS server is your 2008 R2 box. This is at 192.168.137.200. Okay? So we kind of have all the IPs what we want for DHCP, essentially. So we need to create a DHCP scope. Okay, that's going to give out the correct IP address, the correct subnet mask, the correct default gateway, and the correct DNS info for your network. Right? So we could say over here for the scope, maybe I'm going to have started at 192.168.137. Maybe we'll start it at .50 as the first usable IP, and we'll go to .100. That gives us 50 usable IPs. It's plenty for what we're doing right now. And so that could be the starting IP, the ending IP. We're going to need to give a subnet mask. Our subnet mask should default to 255.255.255.0. We're going to need to give a default gateway of 192.168.137.1. Very good. And then DNS. What are we going to give for DNS?
200 and 205.
Yeah, 2. We're going to give 2 servers. So DNS is going to be 192.168.137.200 and 205. Because both of these servers are currently DNS servers, and they're currently domain controllers. So until we demote one and get rid of one, and then uninstall DNS, we'll use both of them for now. Okay. So if you want something more challenging, what you can do is you can put DHCP on your 2008 R2 box, and then figure out how to migrate that over. There's some tools that can actually migrate. You can do it manually. You can actually back up the DHCP database, and you can restore it. kind of cool. There's nice little articles on that and how to back up. And then there's actually some migration tools built into Server 2012 R2 that will help with that procedure as well. So just kind of FYI is that you can do both of those in terms of migrating. But we'll end up putting our DHCP from scratch on our 2012 R2. And then another thing you can do with DHCP is, what if you want DHCP to be highly available? What would we do? You do that. You can install another 2012 R2 box, and then you can have DHCP functioning kind of as a highly available service, where you've got two independent servers running DHCP. One goes down, the other one will take its place.
It's fault tolerance.
Yeah, basically kind of having a high availability or fault tolerant DHCP server, and that you can do as well. Okay? So you just got to configure it correctly on both servers. So our goal for now is just to get the DHCP started and get it kind of up and running. What else do we need to do for DHCP in order for it to work once we install it, after we kind of add it? Yeah, so I said authorize. So we will also have to authorize our DHCP. So somewhere within Active Directory, we need to let Active Directory has to say, I authorize this server to be a DHCP server. Otherwise, it won't function. You don't want to have a rogue DHCP server on your network that can instantly bring stuff down. Active Directory tries to prevent that by requiring the DHCP servers to first authorize with Active Directory. So you have to know an Active Directory credential in order to do that. And then we've got to then start it up and verify it works and test it. So that's kind of the gist of that. All right. So the other thing besides all this that we're doing is just, we'll cover that next. We'll get DHCP running, and then we'll dive into the third. So the other big concept that we're going to do today was our second domain. We talked about that last week. We're going to add an entire child domain to our existing infrastructure. I don't think we did we?
What?
I think you're the one.
We have the.
But you guys didn't create a third domain controller, right?
I did.
You did? What did you create it as? Is Europe?
Europe.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we'll review that again. I think maybe a few people might have created the child domain, but I think only a few people did that. So we'll review that as well. Okay. Turn this guys.
So with the DHCP, you can just back it up and restore it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's on the high level. You go from your 2008 R2 box, you run some commands that back it up.
Oh, you can't just back. I just backed it up from within the program.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then you can take it to your 2012 and import it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's in there. So it's kind of a cool way of doing that.
Then you would just kill your first one. You would have to go in and deauthorize it.
Then you just shut it down. If you want, we can look at that. I mean, you guys want to put it on the 2008 box and then move it over?
I'd like to.
Sure. All right. We'll make it more challenging. All right. So what we'll do is we'll put DHCP on our 2008 R2 box, get it functioning because they're a different little interface, and then we'll actually get this working here. We'll show you how you back it up, and then when you back it up, we can move it. You can import it into your 2012 R2 box. Okay. If you didn't know how to do that, how would you go about finding the right information for that?
Google.
There's some nice TechNet articles on moving DHCP from 2008 R2 to 2012 R2. And there's some nice articles on moving it from 2003 to 2008 R2. Okay, so I think I've done every which way you can do them. So we can play around with that. Sure, that'd be kind of fun to play around with and figure how that goes. Okay. Okay. I gotta move this thing. Maybe. just has a bad angle. Yeah, I don't know how our our streaming service is going to work with this guy, but. I need a stick right front. All right, so then what we'll do is we'll have to I'll log on first to my 2008 R2 box. And I said, what we're going to do is we're going to put DHCP first on our. And so if you got this Windows activation, we're using kind of trialware, so it might not be genuine. So if you want to fix this, what's the command to get this to go away for a little bit? Or that one? So if you have a command prompt, and it's
rearm.
Server licensing MGR, whack rearm, I believe. And server licensing MGR rearm. That will rearm your Windows installation. And so I got to restart it, take effect. I don't want to restart this, but
SLMGR.
Server licensing manager. That's just how I remember. Server licensing manager, and then rearm. I just kind of pulled that off the top of my head.
I can't read it. Last server manager / what?
Server licensing. So it's SL, MGR,
Right.
and then rearm. Whack.
You can do that up to 4 times, I think.
Yeah, you can do it a couple
4
times.
times? Just 4 times.
It should tell you only have.
So.
Is it trial version?
Yeah. All right, but that's fine. I won't reboot it. So from here, we're gonna, and you'll kind of see the difference between DHCP on 2008 R2 and then DHCP on a 2012 R2. So it's fine. All right. So from 2008 R2, we're going to basically add a role, and I'll make problem steps recorders of this. Okay. Okay, so you see the server managers are different within 2012 R2 and 2008 R2, but I'm going to add a role here. So I'll go into my wizard for 2008 R2, and we'll add a role. And then it's just going to be a DHCP server. Okay, so we're going to add the DHCP server. And next, and this is a different interface. I think the 2008 R2 is a little clunky, to be honest. It's DHCP. So it finds the first, your IP that's bound. So it's, we want to put that in that subnet, and that network ID 192.168.137, and then next. And it gives you your parent domain here. My parent domain is Kavonberg. And I've got DNS server. I can validate it if I want. It gives me, it's okay, cool. At least I know my DNS is working. WINS, we're not using WINS. It's kind of a legacy, NT-based name resolution for NetBIOS name resolution. Okay. And then now we can add a DHCP scope. Okay. And this is where these interfaces are so different from 2008 R2. So we could give it a scope. So here I'll call this we'll just call this is my
I just named it
server. I'll call this my server 2008 R2 DHCP. Okay. So here you give it a starting IP 192.168.137, and we said .50, and an ending IP 192.168.137.100. And we'll do a wired lease by default of 8 days. defaults our subnet mask is fine, and then we want a default gateway, 192.168.137.1. And then hit OK. And then next, we'll just leave all of the DHCP or the V6 stuff in its stateless mode. So the IPv6 is a whole other animal. We're not going to dive into that in here, but it's just it's a whole other animal, the IPv6. So we're just going to chug through our IPv6 info. This is where you're going to, it kind of wants to then authorize the DHCP server, so we'll authorize it. And then we will install everything on here. Okay. So it'll go through the installation. It shouldn't require a reboot on the server. And then we can then launch it. We might have to try to authorize it again or start it, but we'll see. So that runs, so now I can find in my services, so we can stop this recording. So that was the DHCP install. So let's go over here. This is our new folder. This is lab 07 underscore 10-26 2015. And this was our DHCP install on server 2008 R2. Okay. So I'll start this up again and we'll do the save. Just going to give it a second to save. Takes a little while longer to save this over on we're on our internal network with ICS, but it'll finish there. So next, after this runs, we'll go ahead and open up our DHCP console, and then we'll see that we're going to have an IPv4 setting, an IPv6 setting. We'll see if the services are running. While this is running, another good thing just to kind of check out is if you're checking with DHCP is that you can go into your services. Now this install, it should have some type of DHCP services. Okay, and you want to verify if something's wrong with DHCP. One of the first places you're going to go is verify, hey, my DHCP server is running. Okay, if this is stopped for any reason, DHCP will be stopped. And some servers do that. So sometimes, for instance, SBS networks, if they get any whiff of a DHCP running on a router or a switch or anything, the server automatically just stops DHCP from functioning. And that can cause all kinds of problems, meaning that sometimes somebody can just bring a router from home and plug in the network accidentally, and then that has DHCP running, and it'll shut down your DHCP server on your server. So there's some servers that do that. You kind of got to be careful, but you can go into services and verify it's running. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start another problem steps recorders up, and then I need to go to my admin tools, and then look at my DHCP console on here. So when I pull up my DHCP console, I can then look at it and I can see what's running. And cool. So far I got my IPv4 is running, my IPv6 is running. I can go and look at my scope. My address pool starts at 50, ends at 100. I shouldn't have any leases right now. I don't have anything on there. Here's my scope options. So it's giving my router to .1, my DNS to 200, my domain name, K. Vonberg, and everything looks good. You have a concept of also what's called a reservation in DHCP. So a reservation is kind of cool. If you have a specific client or a printer or a server, and you want to use DHCP to give it the exact same IP every single time, you can create a DHCP reservation. It's actually a better way, I'll be honest, of managing your servers in terms of if they're static IPs. So some people will put static IPs on all their servers and devices and manage them that way. You can also assign basically a static IP using a DHCP reservation. But you have to capture the MAC address and when you capture the MAC address, you input it in here, and then when that server turns on, it'll contact and sends its MAC address to the DHCP server, and the DHCP server will in turn give it the IP address that you specified. So it's basically like it's a static IP essentially. But that way it gives you a console where you can see all of those settings versus having it, in a spreadsheet or not knowing it. So just kind of FYI, you can do that. And then what is kind of cool about a reservation is you can actually give it different scope information. So you could give it a different default gateway. So I use this in one setting where we had 4 or 5 Windows 7 clients. For this particular reason, they had to hit a different default gateway. And I didn't want to assign them statically because I wanted to keep track of them. So we actually created a reservation, and all the rest of the networks had a default gateway of like a Sonic wall or a Pix router. And then these 5 clients, these 5 machines, I wanted to have a gateway of a Sonic wall, a different gateway, just because we were doing some application publishing for these guys. And so I actually put a DHCP reservation, and those 5 machines got a different default gateway, and it just worked out for that particular setting. Just kind of FYI, you can do that. All right, so that's the basic info in terms of our information. You could look at the the DHCP IPv6 stuff if you wanted to. We haven't created all the info, but it's on here. IPv6 is kind of interesting, so you guys should know. So IPv6 is on by default pretty much in Windows 7, 2008 R2, 2012, and it'll work in the stateless mode, meaning that it can communicate on your LAN without any interaction whatsoever. What's interesting about IPv6 is that if you have a router that has IPv6 turned on, okay, automatically without any intervention, all of your servers and clients in your network will automatically see that IPv6 router, and they will auto configure themselves to use that IPv6 gateway to get on the internet. Okay? And that can cause all kinds of headaches because you've hard-coded information for IPv4 to hit a specific IPv4 gateway, and all of a sudden, boom. So what's happening in this area a lot is Comcast is lighting up IPv6 all over the place on their routers. They're updating firmware, and all of a sudden their routers, their gateway devices, are IPv6 just gets turned on. And in some places that won't cause any problems, but some places I've had major headaches because it then routes traffic through that. It causes problems. The latest thing I've seen is that on an on-prem Exchange server is working fine for the past 5 years. All of a sudden, Comcast lit up IPv6, and now the Exchange server literally is communicating with IPv6. It's saying out IPv6, and half their email is getting rejected, and the error message that comes back says, you need a reverse PTR DNS record for IPv6. You call your provider, they can't even create that. Comcast or Astound or anything, they can't even create IPv6 PTR records. So it's kind of like you're screwed. I mean, I had to basically put a Sonic wall or some firewall in between the gateway and the servers to then so they wouldn't see IPv6. That was kind of the only solution. You can't just turn off IPv6 on servers. That'll break it even more. If you just decide to uninstall, then you'll reboot and your server won't even turn on, or it'll take 2.5 hours to turn on. Okay, so there's some information that you got to be aware with IPv6. So, and I would say it's not really used in the small medium business, but it's the big boys, the big giant enterprises, are the ones that are using IPv6. But it's good to know and know how to troubleshoot it. Okay, so now we can go look at and we can turn on our Win 7 client. So I've got a Windows 7 client over here. So let me turn on my Win 7. Turn this guy on.
Did you authorize already?
Yeah, authorizing it was part of the initial install of the role. It should have been. And if we wanted to, we could go and look at it, and we could manually look at it and try to say, I want to go there, and it's already authorized, but then I want to unauthorize it. But if it's not, then you'd right click it and you would authorize it. But as part of the role install, there was a portion where we authorized it. Okay. Otherwise, you would have to go there and authorize it. Okay.
And if it were not authorized, you just authorize it right there.
Yeah, if it wasn't authorized, you'd have to right-click this, authorize it, and then you'd have to give some domain admin credentials with the username and password for that domain, and then boom, it would authorize it. It's pretty quick in terms of authorizing it. All right, so I'm starting up my Windows 7 machine. Now, Windows 7 machine, I'll go ahead and log on here. I'm just logging on, it looks like locally right now. And so, let's just see what IP information I have right now. So I can go CMD, I can go whack K, and I can go whack IP config. Whack all. Okay. So it says here that, first of all, is my IP information getting it dynamically or statically?
Static.
Was DHCP enabled? Yes. And so I think it's getting it dynamically because
Oh, yeah,
DHCP
that's right. Yeah.
is enabled, so it's not static. So and my DNS, it looks like it's actually static. So if we go look at the IP settings on here, it looks like my DNS is probably getting it statically over here. So it is. So so first thing I want to, because we had to set this up because our other DHCP server was giving out the wrong info. So I'll have this to obtain automatically. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a IP config release renew. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open up another command prompt and I'll do an IP config and I will release my IP information. Okay, and you see it still keeps this link local IP of IPv6 even though it's released. And then I'll do a IP config renew. And we'll see which, hopefully I get the IP from the DHCP server we just configured. Now we might have some conflicts because we do have that weird DHCP proxy running on our internal network. But what IP did I get there? Got 50?
Yep.
So is that part of my new scope?
Yes.
Yeah. So now I can do an IP config /all, and I can see, cool, I got the right DNS server, and my DHCP server is .200. So I'm getting my IP information from my 2008 R2 DHCP server. Okay, so I should be able to go look in the DHCP leases, and this client should be there. So let's go look at that. So if we go back, pull up my 2008 R2 box, and now refresh my lease, there it is. Bam. So that's my lease that I'm getting. Let me go ahead and stop this recording. I don't even know what this was, but this was our DHCP config, I guess, one. Okay. So cool. So it got a IP address, and I can see it in my lease. Now, what is this unique ID?
That's the MAC.
Correct. So Tom, that's the MAC address. So this is ending in, 7608. So if we go back to my Windows 7, what is ending in 7608 over here? That's the physical MAC address. Okay, the physical 7608. Now, what if you wanted to figure out who manufactured that device for that MAC address?
Could you look up
The first six.
That's a very common thing. You only have a MAC address, and that's all you have. Okay, I've had this happen several times. I have a funky device on my network. I don't know where it is. I don't know where it came from. It's taking up an IP address. It's using something. I want to figure out what it is. Well, if you have the physical address, you can actually put that into a MAC lookup tool, and it'll tell you. Okay, so if we just go to our nice little search engine, so we'll go to Google, and from here I could go there and type in for instance, a MAC lookup. Okay, so MAC address lookup. And there are several of these MAC address lookups. So this is a good one over here, I think, this first one. And what you do is you just put in the first digits of that. So the digits over here under my MAC address are this. So I can go there and, for instance, mark these. So I can go and find those guys. And then I can go and copy that. And I can go and paste it into here. And I should get some response back. And this should actually be a Microsoft. Should be own this, I think. So it tells you Microsoft vendor owns that. Why does Microsoft vendor own that prefix?
Because it's in Hyper-V.
To Hyper-V. Hyper-V is the MAC address in Hyper-V. Okay, so Microsoft actually owns those. They have a whole set of IPs that get out with Hyper-V. Okay, but you can deal with any MAC address, and it'll pretty much tell you the vendor, and it'll tell you information about that. So it's kind of cool. Okay, so that's just some information with regards to finding, with a MAC address, you can find who manufactures the device. And that's actually pretty useful information, believe it or not. Okay. All right, so cool. So we got DHCP functioning on our network. So far so good, man. I got an address pool. I got a reservation. If we had more devices, I could go there and I could create a reservation. If we just go look at what happens with this,
Go to the lease for a second. So you can right click on the lease and you can convert it to.
You can probably go there, and so if you go to the lease, you can right click and you can add to a reservation, and then that would then constantly add that guy to a reservation. Yeah. Okay. So that's the basics of this of DHCP. DHCP is also useful. I'll be honest, I use it all the time to sometimes because it gives you the IP address and it gives you the host name. So that's kind of nice. All right. So DHCP is something you should be familiar with. You should also be familiar with DNS. I should also be able to, because this Win7 is mapped to .50, so I should be able to verify that in DNS as well. So if I open up a command prompt, for instance, and do ns lookup, I should be able to then do Win7, and it tells me it's .50. Okay, and that's coming from specifically the DNS database, and I should have a record in here for Win7, and there's the IP address. Okay. Now sometimes if you flip machines over really quickly, it takes a little while for them to upgrade. What's the command if you want to register the DNS to make that register more quickly than it would? That's ipconfig /register DNS. Okay, so ipconfig register DNS will cause the server to force it to register itself with the DNS server. So it's going to update its record in the DNS database.
That's just for the machine that you're on.
Just for the machine you're in. Just for the local machine. Now you can also do an ipconfig flush DNS. This would flush the local cache, which is sometimes useful if you have cached information that's wrong. And that way it would go there and query that information. You have to contact the DNS to get that information. Okay. All right. So again, this is a well, it should be a domain joined machine. Maybe it's not. Let's go see. So yeah, so this is a domain joined machine. So it should be registering itself with the DNS server, meaning that I have a DNS record for this machine and its associated IP address. And that's again what DNS does. DNS maps host names to IP addresses. And so you can see I've got DC1, DC2, and now my client of Win7. And I've got the associated names and also the associated IP addresses. And if we dive into this a little bit more, we can even see there's more information about, for instance, what do you think this GC is? What is that information? A global catalog telling you, hey, this is where your global catalogs are. What do you think the PDC is? Finds a record for that. why does the PDC have DC2?
Because that's where it resides.
That's the PDC emulator. Alright, so it resides on DC2. If we do a netdom query Fismo, my PDC emulator is on DC2. That's what this is telling me over there, DC2. Okay? So this DNS is also mapping SRV records, okay, in terms of information that's in here. So this over here has some information about domains, and here it's telling you that this is on DC1 and DC2. Okay? And here's your DC. What do you think your DC is for? Domain controller. It's telling you this is a domain controller. And DC1 is a domain controller, DC2 is a domain controller. I should also have the global, I believe both these are global catalogs. So the DC1 and DC2 are global catalogs. But my PDC, only one of those is my PDC emulator. So it only has DC2. Okay? So if I was to go there and change that information, eventually it should update this information as well. Because this used to be DC2. I mean, this used to be DC1 when we first started off, this PDC. Okay? And then we have our reverse lookup zone as well. Information's in our reverse lookup zone as well. Okay. So DNS and DHCP kind of tie together because DHCP is going to dish out all the IP addresses, and then those registers that are supposed to be, if they're a secure domain join, DNS is then going to get all those, and it's going to create the appropriate records in the DNS database to map those host names to computer names. Okay, if one of these services fails, DHCP or DNS, your network will stop working very, very quickly. Okay, I mean very, very quickly. Okay. Okay. So we'll take a little break. I'm going to give you guys 15-20 minutes to get DHCP fully functioning on your server and get your Windows 7 machine and get it to get an IP address from your DHCP server, and you should be able to then show a lease in your 2008 R2 server.